Good afternoon. Good afternoon. If you could please find your seat. If you could please find your seats, we're going to get started with the program. If you could please find your seat, we're going to get started with the program. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. If you could please find your seats, we're going to get started with the program. If you could please find your seat, we're going to get started with the program. We're going to have the singing of Lift Every Voice and Sing. So if you could find your seat, and then if you're willing and able to stand, we're going to get started with the program.
Every voice and sing.
Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought. Sing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope
As we get ready for our libations, I'd like to ask your permission for us to begin our libations. Ashe, thank you. We stand here today on the shoulders of those ancestors that have come before us. We continue our struggles because of the courage and the courage that they gave us. And we honor them with these libations. For the motherland, cradle of civilization, Ashe. For the ancestors who gave us the strength to never give up the struggle, Ashe. For our elders for whom we can learn much, Ashe. For our youth who represent the promise for tomorrow, Ashe. For our people, the original people, Ashe. For our struggle and in remembrance of those who have struggled on our behalf, Ashe. For the Nguzo Sabo, and may they guide us in all we do, Ashe. For the Creator who provides all things great and small, Ashe. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ajamu Amiri Dillahunt, and I'll be the MC for tonight's program honoring, celebrating, and remembering the life of Baba Saladin Muhammad. We're here today to hear reflections, to hear stories, and to hear personal stories about those who engaged and worked with him over the last decades of his work in the Black freedom struggle and the labor movement. And he was active on a host of different fronts. He wasn't active just for a short period of time. He's an example of what we see as a longevity in the movement, a long-term committed freedom fighter. And so today we have with us his daughter, Miss Oheniwa White Ra, who will share personal reflections about the political impact that Baba Saladin had on his family. And if you have a program in front of you, you'll see speakers who will be talking about his work in the Revolutionary Action Movement, his work as a culture worker, his work as a labor leader, his work on different aspects of the Black freedom struggle. And so we hope the program tonight provides a real comprehensive understanding of someone who was so important, someone who we hold close and dear to our hearts, and someone who's helping guide our fight today in the 21st century against our enemy. So please welcome Baba Saladin's oldest daughter, Miss Oheniwa Wright Ra.
Peace, everybody. I thought I was ready for this, but I quickly realized that I'm not. I said, peace, everybody. All right, can you hear me? I said, I thought I was ready for this, but I quickly realized that I'm not. But I'm gonna do what I can do. First, I gotta say, I can't believe I haven't talked to my dad. So, as I was thinking about my dad and how he wanted to make sure that his children and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren, and that there was a legacy of political education. I kind of want to start chronologically. So the first thing that I could remember as a child is that we always had a library in our house. And my dad always built the library. He built the structure and he built the information that was in it.
And because I'm a daddy's girl, I always wanted him to see me reading. Even if I wasn't reading, I just wanted him to see me with a book. And that kind of took because I started reading the books. But we had collections of books, Lenin and Stalin, and we had like everybody who I see as like these major people were just my parents' friends, and friends of the struggle. So the first way was that he made sure that we saw that reading was important, and that what we read was important. And I think that's something that all of his children kind of carried in our house, because I think we all have some sort of library in our house for our children. And we encourage reading. The second thing that he did was he always made sure that we were present at meetings and protests and revolutions and the televised and the untelevised ones. I remember probably more through being told this experience than realizing it, but I remember seeing a picture of myself at a SEPTA boycott as a little child. I was on a picket line for mass transportation in Philadelphia. I was a little kid. I was probably in like walking shoes because I could see the picture in my head. And I had a smile because it never felt like a place I didn't want to be or that we didn't want to be. So we were always at a meeting somewhere, and I always say we were always at the revolution. Another way was through our education. So we went to an African free school, and in that school we had political education because my parents wanted to make sure that what we took in every day for the rest of our lives was going to shape and inform our lives. So we went to an African free school, and every day we said a pledge that spoke to who we are and who we were as African people, how important reading and discipline and listening was for us. And another way was just through conversation. I think all of us talk to our dad a couple times a week. And it might have started off checking in, hey babe, how you doing? And then it turned into something about the news, something about, one of the hardest pieces for me has been talking to my dad every week. He was my unofficial dissertation coach. So every week I got to talk to him about what I was writing, my analysis on what I was reading. And my sister had the same experience. My brother had the same experience, and my children had the same experience. So just everyday conversation, talking to him. He wanted to hear what we thought about the world, what we thought about international and global events and experiences. And he gave us an opportunity to think in our own way. And then he gently kind of helped us to have a more international perspective about the world. The other thing that my parents in general, they encourage us to see the world, right? I remember in 2017 or 16 when I was preparing for a trip to Cuba, my dad was excited that I was taking my now 14-year-old, then 9-year-old to Cuba so that she could start to see the world outside of her Philadelphia space. And then he talks to the grandchildren, my nephew, who's the oldest boy, but all of them, he just talked to them and you could hear them talking to him and starting to have a conversation outside of just how was their day. But he asked questions and you almost didn't know he was asking you like political education questions. You just were having this conversation. You didn't try to have the right answer. You just engaged him in conversation. And so I think my dad was really good at just making sure that we stayed engaged. And the one thing that was most important for him is that we thought logically. As we grew up, I don't know about my siblings, but I'm just like, beat me already because I don't even know. I don't know if it was logical, sir. I just wanted to do it, and that's what I did. So, and he wanted to know, is it logical? And it turned into like a half hour or sometime an hour lecture around stuff. I remember I was dating this guy. I might have been 19. And he gave me a gold chain. I might have shared this story before, but I remember him making me give that chain back because he said that it wasn't logical to take such an expensive gift from a working class man. And I was just like, what? Like, so, I was completely done with him at that point, right? I was like, first of all, he didn't have a problem buying it. And I think I said that in my head, but it just didn't make sense for me because like he works every day and it was only however much it was, but years later, it really made sense for me. And I found myself saying the same thing to my children about not necessarily just money, but understanding how you can get caught up in this kind of capitalist system. And so as you spend, you have to earn, and you might do anything to earn because you're overspending. And so that was really interesting. I was like 19 and it did make sense. So again, I think those kind of three areas was he modeled it through having libraries and encouraging us to read, through really having us present and being present in this revolutionary struggle. I remember going to concerts with Gil Scott-Heron and Baba Bilal, like sitting and listening to them play and sing and not realizing like the legacy that was being instilled in our family. So this has been I'm sure it's been hard for folks. It's been a hard almost 3 months, not being able to hear my dad's voice, not being able to ask him questions. He was like our labor lawyer. If anybody had a problem on the job, my oldest daughter, she was signing a work contract and she called, she was like, Daddy, I got to sign this contract. I need you to help me understand what it means. I had a friend in Philly who had some issues with work. I called my dad and he coached me nicely by saying, just give her the information, but don't impose it, because if she makes this choice that she doesn't want, she might come back to you and say, you made her do this. So, but he was just always there, always present, and mostly gentle, mostly gentle. Sometimes it was force, but even in that, it was love. And I hope that we can continue this legacy of political education for our children and our grandchildren, whatever that looks like. I know he knows that he had an impact on us, and I miss him. I miss him.
Baba Saladin was a revolutionary every minute and every day. Thank you to Ms. Oheniwa for those powerful words. And please, as we move forward throughout the program, as we honor Baba Saladin with political action, please make sure you stop by the table of the family to show them love, to show them support. And as the months go on, let's continue to support them and be there for them as we seek to honor him through our work and commitment. Now we're going to have remarks from participant, leader in the Revolutionary Action Movement and African People's Party, and Philly organizer, Mr. Muhammad Adil.
Peace be unto you. Give me 1 second. Saladin Muhammad was my best friend, one of my best friends. This was a little harder now than I called his phone number last week. I know nobody was going to answer, but I heard his voice. It's the same thing, Saladin Mohammed. I'm used to him calling me and me calling him. Naima told me, I said, how's Saladin doing? She said, well, he ain't feeling too good. So he get on the phone with me, she hears him laughing, or she know when she hear him laughing, he talking to me. And same thing my wife said. You wasn't feeling good, but I know I hear you and Saladin and they're making all that noise. And we cheered each other up. He recruited me into the liberation movement, which saved my life, you know. Sometime in life you be going in the wrong direction. And I got in the movement. I told y'all this, some of y'all probably remember. I kept going around Saladin and them under the influence of alcohol and everything else. And I was hearing so much about Black people that I didn't know. And I kept going, and then I started stealing books from them. They didn't know it. So when I joined the organization, I took an oath. I said, you know, I want to confess something to you. Every time I come around, man, I've been stealing books from y'all. I'll bring them all back tomorrow. And they all laughed. But the movement, you know, he was key. Saladin was the only one I knew that when he moved south, people from other organizations, they were saying, why did he go? And I didn't even know they even liked him like that. They was a little upset that he moved south. These are other organizations that we work with in Philadelphia. But they got down here to enlighten you on the Revolutionary Action Movement. I wasn't a member of it. I was a member of the African People's Party, but Saladin and some older other members, they were members of the Revolutionary Action Movement. And after they went away, it was us, the African People, National African People's Party. Saladin was our chairperson from 1971 to I think 1980. We worked with everybody in Philly, the tenants, drug users, young people, old people, we tutored children. We had a free breakfast program. There's a lot of different things we were known for. And Saladin had so much heart. We was trying to run the drug pushers out of the community. And I told Saladin, I said, somebody told me they setting a trap up for us, man. When we come down there, they got a guy gonna snipe us from the 4-story window. And Saladin said, he said, okay. And we all got together and prepared ourselves. He takes us right directly to where the trap is at. I said, Salo, I told you this is where they got the sniper at. He acted like he didn't even hear me. He stood there with a bullhorn and he named the top 10 drug dealers in the community. Called them by name and said, we want y'all out of our community by any means necessary. And then as we retreated and walked around the other way, we had some other organizations with us. They started shooting at us, and then we returned fire because we believed in self-defense. But the problem was the coalition that we was a part of, they was upset with us. They said, well, what is this firearm stuff? So we said, we told y'all in the beginning that we believe in self-defense. And if we hadn't been prepared, we wouldn't be here talking to y'all right now. And it was something we went through there. I have a few things I wrote down. I'm gonna go through them right quick. I don't want to get too long-winded. I'm glad this ain't like the last one they had for 4 minutes. The quickest 4 minutes I ever seen in my life. But I want to share this with you. I won't be long. when I first got in the movement, Saladin told us, he said, leave your religion at the door. So everybody's like, well, what you mean by that? He said, in this organization, we do work. Whatever your faith is, that's your faith, that's your personal faith. We're not in here to discuss people's faiths. We roll up our sleeves and we work with the masses. Now, this is what I remember through one of the political education classes. He said, a revolutionary must totally submit their will to the will of the masses of our people. We must have an undying love for our people. Nothing must stand in our way. No obstacles is too big to overcome, even if it is ourselves. Our love for our people must be greater than anything else. He made sure that we all understood that. He believed in self-determination and that we should demand reparations for our people. He believed in world Black revolution. He believed to win the class struggle, workers must study the system to change it. He believed that literacy is the key victory. He believed that consciousness is key. He believed class-conscious workers can build a mighty movement. He believed organization is key. He told me the only answer is to mobilize the workers. He believed we need working class power. He believed that we should fight for a workers' program, a livable wage. These are some of the groups that Saladin, I was talking to a member and they said, well, it came through the African People's Party, but he was a co-founder of one of them, the co-founder of the Young Afro-Americans, the Young African Nation Youth League, the African People's Drug Rehabilitation Program, the African People's Anti-Drug Coalition, the Pan-African Institute, the Black Guard Community Protection Program, the Committee for Better Transportation, the Black Workers Support Committee, the National Black Human Rights Coalition, the Public Housing Tenant Council Anti-Charter Change Coalition, the Citizens for Social Justice Coalition, the African Institute of Martial Arts, and the National Black Independent Political Party, and we was part of the Black Anti-Bicentennial in 1976. I don't know why I'm shaking. Who was Saladin Mohammed? Gone but not forgotten. He was born on April the 3rd, 1946 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In September the 19th, he made transition. Who was Saladin Mohammed? He was the chairman of the Philadelphia chapter of the National African People's Party from 1971 to 1980. He was a community activist. He was a revolutionary nationalist. He was a scientific socialist. He was a freedom fighter. He was a political writer. He was a mastermind. He walked a straight line. He taught political education classes. He was a servant to the masses. He was a skilled organizer. He was a skilled mobilizer. He was a political advisor. He was a political tactician. He refused any personal recognition. Gone but not forgotten. He was a good husband, good grandfather, and good dad. He was our comrade. gone but not forgotten. He was against dope. He was about hope. He had no fears. He was unselfish and sincere. He was a heavy reader. He was a behind-the-scene African leader, gone but not forgotten. I want to be able to see him or call him anymore. I won't be able to see him or call him anymore. I won't get advice from him anymore. He was one of my best friends. It's sad. He was my best friend. He was my comrade. I will miss him dearly. I talked to him when he was in the hospital. He called me every day and he said, Muhammad, I still got my boxing gloves on. I'm still fighting. And I said, okay, man. And he'll call me. And he said so much humor with him. He sent me a text with some alligator shoes and a funny looking shirt and some pants. Because I told him I was gonna buy him some clothes when he come out of the hospital. He said, man, don't buy me none of them more clown outfits that you wear, man. When I got married, I said, Salo, I'm wearing a tuxedo with tails. He said, come on, man. I said, no, I'm wearing tuxedo with tails, so you gotta be wearing tuxedo with tails because you my best man. So anyway, we took some pictures and everything. So I sent him an 8x10 picture. When I came down here, I said, Sal, where the 8x10 picture at? I can't find it. I said, no, you don't misplace nothing. Where's the picture? I said, you felt like you wasn't a worker because you had on a tuxedo. You look good, man. And it was only for one day. So he told me, him and Naima came up to where I was getting married at. After this, I'm gonna get off. So Naima and Saladin pulled up. They seen all these people outside, you know, white people, Asians, Puerto Ricans, it was everybody. So Saladin told Naima, he said, man, I ain't knew Muhammad knew all these different people. I don't recognize none of them. So we go in and he said to me, what kind of, I said, man, this is in Upper Darby. I said, these people getting married. He said, do you know them? I said, no, man, you have your marriage and then they push you through, you go out in the yard, take some pictures and you go on. He said, man, this is a wedding factory. He said, boy, these captains show how to make money. He said, I ain't never seen that. He said, I looked in the showcase, they had rice for sale. So he always teased me about that. But I just want to tell y'all, you know, it's very hard. It is very hard to not know that I won't hear from him no more. I won't receive no advice from him no more, or him, me, vice versa. I know all of us have to go. I know that it's the will of Allah. We all have to go, but it still hurts. So thank you for being so patient with me. May Allah bless you.
That was very, very powerful. And there were many lessons in a lot of those stories. So I'm supposed to be the MC, but I had to open up my notebook, pull out my pen and take notes. So I'm in the back listening, taking notes as he's sharing these stories that have so many lessons for our movement today, but also shows the humor that Baba Saladin had. And it brought, you know, so much joy. He's a fantastic storyteller. It just shows the importance of storytelling in our movement and how we remember people and how we remember our different heroes. So now we're going to have a song from Brother Pope. You have the song from Brother Bilal, right? And then Mama Shaf's going to come up and share some remarks. Okay, we're going to work on that video, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to the next speaker. And then we're gonna run back around and get the video. But next up, we're gonna have representative from the African Institute of Martial Arts, History of Martial Arts from Brother Jomo Yakini. Okay. Just 1 second. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. We had decided, rather than myself coming up as an individual, I decided to bring the collective up, and rather than myself doing a forum, we like share some pictures and memories from the African Institute of Martial Arts, if that's okay with people. Yeah. This is one of the principal instructors, Brother Saud Bey, African Institute of Martial Arts. I was one of the students there back in the 70s. When I walked into the area where they were training, Saladin was like conducting class with combat boots on. And I'm like, these dudes are too serious for me, you know? I said, I'm not ready for this, but I eventually came back and got involved. And later, I think Brother Changa kind of instructed the class for a while. Brother Khartoum instructed the class for a little while. Then eventually we brought on Brother Saud Bey as the principal instructor. So I'll turn it over to him. Thank you.
John Boo. We have a term of endearment in Philly. I'm sure a lot of y'all know it. It's called my boy. And that's who Saladin was for me. My boy. And when you say it like that, it means something. You know, Saladin recruited me. I was doing martial arts. I was in Vietnam in 68. King got killed, Kennedy got killed. The cops beat up all those white kids at the Democratic Convention, Black Glove Olympics, that whole year was tumultuous. So needless to say, when I came back, I put a brace under my arm so I couldn't put it down. Saladin told me, it's okay to put it down, just remember what you had it up there for, you know? So in recruiting, now I'm Kiongozi. I'm head instructor at the African Institute of Martial Arts to this day. The first Kiongozi was Saladin Muhammad. And yes, sir, yeah, he deserved that. Yeah, you know, and so I come from that Asian martial arts background, you know, and we say, so Saladin get me to the side before the class. He says, well, you know, brother, you know, that don't have any cultural or political relevance to us, you know. Yeah, what is that? He say, then when he start going, when he say 3 or 4 you-knows in a row, and he give you this hand, you know right now that it's serious, all right? So he said, look, for African people, man, it's about freeing the people. So when we do offensive techniques, we say, free the people. Oh, I said, yeah, all right, I'm feeling that. He say, and you know, we have plenty of things we have to defend in this community. So when we do defensive move, we say, defend the people, free the nation, defend the people. And that's how it is to this very day. Now, at the African Institute of Martial Arts, Saladin started those classes, and we eventually ended up in Church of the Advocate. Look it up, huge historical church. The Black Power Convention was held there in 68. A lot of stuff went on. That's where the African Institute of Martial Arts, we could not have a greater heritage. Now, in your program, on that first panel at the bottom, there's a picture, black and white picture. Yeah, everybody take a look at that, because this is key. This is early 70s, black and white, bunch of folks sitting in a circle there. Now, I'm not looking in that circle. I'm at the picture right now. But I can look around this room and see that there's people in that circle who is in this room. See, now this how I know y'all people down here in North Carolina love my brother. And y'all should. Because we love him too. This brother was doing work long time ago in Philly. That photo is from the 70s. And to this day, if you look in the back, in the darkness of the photo, that's me sitting there. Saladin's in the middle. I'm just to his right. And as I say these names, please stand up. I'm going from memory, so you ain't got nothing. Baba Changa, stand up, please. He's in there. All right. And I think next to him is Bella Hashem and Walimu Hashem. Hey, yeah. Yeah, I guess I should have brought the program. I'm in the toilet when I should have been out here. I think Takufu is next. Is that Takufu child? Yeah, Takufu not here. And unfortunately, I think Lumumba's next to him, brother, unfortunately just passed last week. And Khartoum's not here. Read me off, Jomo. I should have been looking at the photo. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Chaka Zulu, right. Chaka Zulu, Jomo was in there. He got his back turned. Yeah, right. That's what I was, they were the last two. Muhammad and Ohaniwa is in the photo. Yeah, because just like she said, he would bring them to class and it was part of their political education. And to this day, even I still teach to this day under the banner of the African Institute of Martial Arts. And like Muhammad Adil said, we believe in self-defense. So a huge part of Mwalimu Bwana and Walimu Changa, Chikuyo, and myself, Saul Bay, a large part of our teaching today is based on, that's my dramatic pause, responsible firearms ownership. All right? And those classes are ongoing, and we still teach them to this day under the banner of the African Institute of Martial Arts. So I want to just say to my boy, I'm gonna miss you, brother.
All right, thank you, brothers. Thank you, brothers. So we're going to have Mama Shaf come read a statement from Brother Bilal, and then we'll continue with the program after that. But Mama Shaf.
Greetings, everyone. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Free to land, free to land, free to land by any means necessary. I'm not going to be long. I'm only going to read Brother Bilal Sunni Ali's statement for Baba Saladin. How many here remember the Gil Scott-Heron and the Midnight Band? Raise your hand. So if you remember the saxophone player, the flute player, that's Brother Bilal Sunni Ali. And Brother Bilal Sunni Ali was the spirit of the Midnight Band. But he was also, and is also, a political organizer and activist. And he was a comrade and friend of Brother Saladin. And so he composed some music, which we're having a little bit of trouble playing for you right now, but we will play. James, it is ready? Okay, we will play it a little bit later in the program. And he wrote these words to go along with the music. So if we're not able to play, we will also be sending it out for everyone. A short story about my friend, my colleague, my comrade, my brother, Saladin Muhammad, and I met one morning at Fajr. Fajr is the Muslim prayer offered just before dawn. Fajr prayer was being held that particular morning at my apartment in the Bronx. The very special occasion was the release of political prisoner Muhammad Ahmed, also known as Max Stanford. And I just want to put a little pin here because Bilal would want me to. It's for all those who don't know that brother Dr. Mutulu Shakur has just won parole and will be released on Monday. And for those of you who don't know who Dr. Mutulu Shakur is, he is the stepfather of Tupac Shakur. Free them all. So the very special occasion was the release of political prisoner Muhammad Ahmed, also known as Max Stanford. He had been released in Philadelphia, and a posse from the Muhammad Ahmed Defense Committee had come down to meet with us. I, meaning Brother Bilal, was the national spokesperson for the National Committee for the Defense of Political Prisoners. It was also a discussion of joining of the forces of the East Coast Right On section of the Black Panther Party and the African People's Party. All of that was the occasion. Just to show you that, you know, people talk about the movement back in the day as if all these different movements squattable, but they didn't. We worked together. We worked in tandem. And so that action was about a section of the Panther Party and the African People's Party working together, joining forces. The action taking place was this. Brother Saladin, who I had never met, opened my windows and proceeded to call the Adhan, the traditional Muslim call to prayer, out of my open window. And so, like I said, it was my first time meeting it. And so I had even heard about how loud Salah could get if he was passionate about something. I was so happy to get to know him and so happy to know that someone that loud and that vociferous and that passionate and in that way was committed and on our side. The posse of Muhammad Ahmed Defense Committee, and we worked together, and we closed with Assalamu alaikum, free the land, from Bilal Sunni Ali. I'd like to also, in the spirit of culture, call up the fruit of labor. Baba Saladin and Baba Bilal also believe very much, as folks have been telling you, in the culture of our people, in revolutionary culture, making us strong and stronger to fight, stronger to win. We will win.
This is a special tribute to our beloved comrade, Saladin. And sometimes, you know, when you don't have a lot to say, you just bring a strong song that has meaning to everybody. This song is entitled
Asikatali. Asikatali, no masia bourgeois, season, listen, cool. Asikatali, no masia bourgeois, season, listen, cool. Unzi, twalo. Unfuna, simanyane. Unzi, twalo. Unfuna, simanyane. Tina Bantwana, Ase Africa, Sisi Misili Kuleko. Tina Bantwana, Ase Africa, Sisi Misili Kuleko. Unzi Twa. Unfuna Simayane. Unzi Twalo. Unfuna Simayane, Tina Bantwana, Hase Afrika, Sisi Misili Kuleko. Tina Bantwana, Hase Afrika, Sisi Misili Kuleko. Unzima Lantwala, Unfuna Simayane. Unzima Lantwala, Unfuna Simayane. It doesn't matter if you should jail us, we all free. It doesn't matter if you should jail us, we all free and get to life by hope. Our struggle's hard, but victory will restore our land to our hands. Our struggle's hard, but victory will restore our land to our hands.
Free to land.
Yes, indeed. Music and the movement. Now we're going to have a presentation from Mama Ashaki on Baba Saladin's commitment to Black liberation in the U.S. South. During her presentation, if you could direct your attention, of course, to her, as she's speaking, but also to the screen. She has some words and photos for us to engage with. Mama Ashaki.
Greetings, everybody. Ooh, this is so hard. Ooh, been a hard few months. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about Saladin's leadership in the work of building for national liberation. And always in our work over the years, we had the day-to-day work, but also the long-term vision that we always try to implement. So let's go to the next slide. One of the, it's hard to see, one of the key things that we would always do at the beginning of all of our chapter meetings of BWFJ was to give our oath and creed where we stand. And we would stand up and speak the oath and creed before every meeting would start. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but against the exploitation of workers, for the workers' control of their wealth from their labor, and fighting democratic unions of rank and file workers. These were the things we would say. And we always had the long-term vision of national liberation. No, thank you. Against the political powerlessness of working people, and against national oppression of the Black community and all oppressed nationalities, for the political empowerment of all working people, and the struggle for national liberation of Blacks and oppressed nationalities. So this was always a part of the framework of our work. And next, we can go to the next slide, please. And so part of this work, for example, on the question of voting rights and some of the work that we did in many communities across North Carolina and across the South. And this is showing in 1983, 3 members of BWFJ, Black Workers for Justice, were part of a lawsuit against the town of Rocky Mount for violating Black voting rights. Our acting as plaintiff on the lawsuit was key in helping to shape the political identity of BWFJ as an indigenous workers organization in the Black community. This counteracted the image of labor organizations as outside impersonal forces, which is how most trade unions were seen in the Black community. And our late brother Abner Berry, a founding member of BWFJ, was one of those 3 plaintiffs. Next slide, please. And these are some of the communities that Saladin, these things weren't just our theories that we wrote about and talked about. This was our day-to-day work in the Black liberation movement. And so there were Black communities around the Cummins engine plant, CDC, where, and this happened all over the South, but this was, reflective of it that, they were able to build for CDC, the water infrastructure and everything that they needed to run the factory, and they just bypassed all of the little Black communities and towns around the city. They were out without running water, but they were able to pipe it in with no problem to CDC. So there was a struggle waged about that. Saladin led that struggle. It was a very important one, maybe understated, but quite significant for the people who lived in those areas at that time. And we also worked in the town of Whitakers, in Bloomer Hill, and I have some really fine memories of going with Saladin and Naima into the Bloomer Hill community, which was a part of their work, just seeing how they work together and going into that community and meeting with the families there and building the relationships there. I can't describe it. If you could have seen how they operated together in doing that work, and that has remained a long-term base of our work and throughout Edgecombe and Nash counties, of course, Fremont, Rocky Mount, Shiloh. Next slide, please. And one of the key aspects, and at the time, I thought this was so brilliant, but it was Saladin's leadership that brought it about. But we began building community health clinics in all of these communities across the South. Very important work. And rather than just talking about it, we went to, the Piedmont area, Duke University, UNC, and got students and those institutions to then begin to put resources into those communities with these health clinics that were built throughout. That was the concrete work. It had both immediate meaning for those communities, but it had a long-term vision as well in terms of our self-determination and, working in our own, same as self-defense, but having some minimal access to healthcare. And this was the beginning and the start of this. So next slide, please. This is, part of the work, the community center there. Back one. I also wanted to remember the work that was done in the Shiloh community. One of the first campaigns that we worked on, led by the Mayo Laughing House family, but doing work in Shiloh around toxic contamination. So we were starting with these environmental justice questions, even at that time before it became, kind of a centering phrase, and then, running candidates for Morrisville, for the Shiloh community. So, this was a part of our work. Next one, please. And we had a great movement in Keysville, Georgia. And as we started working on that campaign, where a small Black town didn't have water and sewer, and we have a video of that, maybe we'll post it, that people can see, but it's about 40 minutes long. So, and we didn't have time to pull out 3 or 4 minutes for this, but to just mention the importance of the Keysville movement that was very successful, became nationally known. And Saladin came down. All these communities where I would be working, I'd always get Sal, can you come down here with me so we can, see what all is going on? And he would always come. And he came to Keysville a number of times. And as we neared the election day and renewal of that town from being, defunct, he helped to organize the whole forces of the Black liberation movement from across the South to all come into Keysville and be a part of protecting the community and helping people to vote. And this was the kind of work that he did. He came there and spoke and talked about, the long-term vision of what Keysville was about and what it represented, for the National Black Liberation Movement. This was the part of the work that he did. Then he took the video that we had created, and by the way, all the Black Workers for Justice was involved in creating that story video. And then he took it around the country and spoke from the video, talking about what the conditions, real conditions day-to-day in the South were. So that was very important. Back one more, I'm sorry. This question of the workers, we organized the workers in that town. It was on one industry. It was a nursing home, and where most of the people that worked, or they had to leave and go to Augusta, other places in Georgia. And we organized the workers there. Saladin advised, let's get the elected officials, bring them down, have them stand in front of the nursing home and pass out leaflets calling on the workers to organize. We did that. Then the workers did get organized, and we affiliated them, helped them to affiliate with 1199. And they voted, the union in. So this is part of our work, standing out in front of that nursing home and organizing the workers. Before then, as the employers all over North Carolina and throughout the South would do, they would tell people how to vote. And these, people that ran the nursing home were guilty of doing the same thing. We broke that. Okay. Next. Then during the period of, as workers were, programs like, and I'll get to it next on the slide, but this question of challenging the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and we fought as a principle that our work would be independent of the Democratic and Republican parties, and we would organize our people in the interest, their own self-interest, to fight for the things that we need that couldn't be compromised by the Democratic and Republican Party. So we created this campaign, the Black Workers Political Platform Campaign. We met here at the Brick Center, this very room, in fact. Sister NCO was here and others, and worked on and talked about building a workers' platform independently. Next slide, please. Then the Rainbow Coalition came about. Jesse Jackson was running for office in 84. He ran twice. So one of the things that we talked about internally, and we inside BWFJ would have political discussions about these things to think them through. And often Saladin led us in those discussions, how to, look at the questions. And he always had really he had an insight that advanced, the work that you were trying to do often. And so they were asking us, Ann Braden and some of the others were from the Southern Organizing Committee, and Ann Braden, a long old-time activist, if people remember her, and they wanted us to join the Rainbow Coalition. So we discussed that. Sal said, no, we're not going to join the Rainbow Coalition, but we'll work in a united front with the Rainbow Coalition, but we always want the workers to be able to independently fight for their own interests and not be subsumed under the Democratic Party, whatever it wants to do. And he spoke the full truth on that. We had taken a position, for example, on the question of Palestine. And no sooner did, people got to the Democratic Convention, and we had went there, I think it was in Atlanta. They caved right in on that. We were so pissed. So, but this has been the history repeatedly. Next slide, please. It's not finished here. No, was that it? Okay. So we created over the years, it's been 40-something years, so it's really hard to fully capture the work that went on over 40 years under Sal's leadership. And we're just talking about little bits and pieces of it, but this was concrete work that we did. And we'll get to more of it. But we had the Black Left Unity Network for a number of years trying to help solve the critical question of a unified national Black liberation movement. And we're still working on that today, Salad, and we've been trying to work through reestablishing that process through the MBLM National Unity Initiative, but it's still a challenging, daunting question, but it's a critical one that has to be solved for our liberation struggle to move forward. So thank you all.
Right, thank you, Mama Shaki, for capturing the powerful work that Baba Saladin and BWFJ have done over the years. So we're gonna have a little shift in the program, so if you'll bear with me. So I know it says a break, but our break is gonna be, if people could stand up, stretch your legs a little bit, we're a little tight on time. So we're gonna take, a couple of seconds so people can stand to their feet if they're willing and able. Wiggle your legs a little bit, wiggle your arms. And after, we get our stretching in, we're gonna have UE 150 in about 2 minutes. Now don't go too far now. Don't go too far. This is not a break to, talk and, that kind of thing. But in about 2 minutes, UE 150 is gonna come back and do a presentation. So take a few seconds to wiggle your legs and then come on back. Password? Which password? Oh, okay, yeah. Huh? Everybody. Good people, good people. I know you're seeing friends that you haven't seen in a long time. You're seeing family. We're connecting on different levels, but we got to bring it back. So if you can please find your seat. If you can please find your seat. If you can end your conversation. We have time to communicate. If I can have your attention, please. If I can have your attention, please. Let's conclude these conversations and bring it back to the program. There will be time for fellowship. There will be time for fellowship. Please find your seats. Please find your seats. Please find your seats. If you see somebody standing, tell them to sit down, brother or sister, or comrade or friend. In the back, can you hear me? Huh? Yeah. All right, let's practice some discipline, comrades. Let's find our seats. Oh man, y'all making it hard for me. Let's find our seats.
I bring you greetings from local UE 150, North Carolina Public Service Workers Union. And our National Secretary Treasurer, is he in the mix? Hopefully he's coming to the stage as well. Andrew Dinkelacker. While they're getting set on the stage, I just want to let folks know how I met Saladin and how I met him again here in North Carolina as we were building the Black Workers for Justice. Met him first in '72 when there was a major crisis going on as we were struggling for the various nations, African nations struggling for liberation. And whenever I happen to see this young, energetic leader, there's always a crisis going on. Something had just happened. So again, I met him again after November 3rd, 1979. Some of y'all know that was when the Ku Klux Klan and the FBI and Federal Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco had just murdered 5 major community and trade union organizers in Greensboro, known as the Greensboro Massacre. This was a very dark moment. And for me, I felt as if, boy, what do we do now? And again, our comrade, beloved comrade Saladin was, whenever there was a crisis, he was there, trying to find a way forward. And I'll always remember what my parents taught me about building ships. They said, you gotta build a strong ship, because the ship wasn't meant to just sit in port after you build it. It was meant to make it through crazy storms and high waves. And it was meant to, get to where it had to go. And there was Saladin in 1980, 81, saying, Angaza, you and others like Jim Grant, how many of y'all remember our comrade Jim Grant? Well, he just passed not so long ago. And my other comrades in Black work, he said, we got to build a Black workers organization. And that really struck me, since I grew up at a time when Black workers were really struggling, particularly in the construction trades, fighting racist discrimination in New York and all the other urban areas. And never forget Brother Jim Horton of Harlem Fight Back, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, always understanding the centrality of Black workers in leading our movement for self-determination, liberation, making sure that Black workers played a leading role in the labor movement. And again, there was Brother Saladin, always addressing these questions, but not just with theory. Saladin, you see, he didn't just believe in just building ships and letting them sit in port, with some theory. He believed in that you had to take the ship or the organization you were building, you had to take it out to sea, take it through the storms, take it through the high tides, take it through all the crazy winds, crosswinds. And again, there was Brother Saladin Muhammad, not only just building the ship, building strong organization, but oftentimes piloting and controlling and trying to captain our ship and building more captains to take these ships out to sea through these very rough times. So again, he had made major contributions to this question of the centrality of Black workers being centered through the labor movement, to the Black liberation movement, to the international movement against all oppression. That's capitalism and imperialism for those of you who don't want to acknowledge it. But he was there. trying to give some strategic direction, developing strategic plans, laying out the importance of that 58% of all African Americans are in the South, and we need to be building organizations here and labor unions and liberation organizations here in the South. So many of those struggles, as you know, were in the various workplaces where we centered the work of Black Workers for Justice over the last 40 years. Sledge lock in Rocky Mount was one of our major fights. How many of y'all remember the struggles at Sledge Lock from you folks here in North Carolina? So some of you are raising your hands. It was a very powerful and important struggle. And also you understood the role that Black working women had to play. So many of our workplaces were targeting places where majority of Black women workers worked there. And as we moved on, we began to focus on the public sector. And that work, as you know, led to Black Workers for Justice focusing and building the North Carolina Public Service Workers Network. And I see some of the original members of the network there that later on became the North Carolina Public Service Workers Organization, that later on linked up and affiliated with the national UE and became the North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, UE Local 150. But keep in mind, this was not built by professional staff union organizers. This was built by a Black workers organization. No staff, no professional staff. Didn't have to listen to some of the labor bureaucracy tell us that this is a little too Black here, and why you guys doing all this other community stuff. And as y'all know, the South is one of the least unionized regions in the entire country. There's probably as many union members in the state of New York as all 13 Southern states. So that means we had to come up, and I want to thank our brother, our beloved Comrade, for struggling with us about why we had to build something even broader than just unions, just in one location at a time, as most labor unions wanted to do, but why we had to develop regional efforts to organize. That's why we're the North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, city workers, private workers at the Rocky Mount Engine Plant, workers in various cities around the state. And this was very important part of the understanding the centrality of the Black workers leading this work, not just in the workplace, but in the broader community where we still build those kind of connections and relationships and struggles around the many other issues that impact the Black working class as well as the broader working class. Whether it's, well, I want to just be brief. The other important contribution that he made was helping us think through this question of how do we build a regional network of organizations, workers, unions. And out of that grew the founding of the Southern Workers Assembly in 2012. Many of you were there down in Charlotte when they had the Democratic Convention, when folks were trying to get us to play that old game. Well, you got no choice, you just got to roll with the Democratic Party. We challenged the Democratic Party because they too weren't doing anything to build the unions here in the South. So out of that, Brother Saladin really struggled with us to develop this breadth. And I think for since 2012, Ajamu, all the way to today, we are still building that Southern Workers Assembly. That was just the courage and tenacity of Saladin Muhammad to keep us on track. Matter of fact, I got angry at him when I visited him in the hospital down here. My wife and I, Nathan at Mayo, went to the hospital just to check on our comrade. This is a few days just before he passed. And I told him, look, man, listen, you can't keep talking with Saladin. He'll keep you here. He's on a respirator. Can you imagine on a respirator? He wanted to talk, 30, 40 minutes, barely breathe. I said, look, man, I had to come up with an excuse. I said, look, man, we got to make it to another meeting, Saladin, the Southern Workers Assembly. And then he begs Nathan and I, hey, man, can I at least listen in? Can I at least listen? Here he is thinking about building the movement. And he's on his deathbed. And he says, last words, you guys look strong. Love you all. Carry on. This was the tenacity, the strength, the courage, the boldness of Saladin Muhammad. But I think one of the most significant contributions he made was trying to help us think through a lot of the strategic and theoretical questions that we were faced with in organizing the public sector here in North Carolina. Want to give special tribute to all those members of the Durham City Workers Union, which way back in the 1980s began building in the public sector and helped the Black Workers for Justice begin to expand it beyond the Durham and a few other cities into what we have here today. And just honored that we've built layers and layers of leaders. Saladin always believed that out of political action has to come the development of cadre. You know what cadre is. If you don't, they're very disciplined. They're like the Navy SEALs. They're well trained. They're critical, strategic thinkers. They're fighters, and they carry their mission forward. Well, you can give a round of applause to all of these cadre. And proud to say also that our national union, unlike other unions, did not do what most unions wanted to do, which is control the politics of our local here in North Carolina, particularly a local that was 90% Black vote. And also women-led, because most of our presidents have been women leaders. But instead, what they did is they supported our thinking about how to build this union and how to build other unions like it. Want to just introduce, since I want to really cut myself short on this, because I can go on. I want to introduce our National Treasury Secretary, Brother Andrew Dinkelacker, who's going to say a couple of words. Okay, well, we're going to introduce our president of our local, Sister Sakia Royal.
Good afternoon, comrades. We are honored and excited to be a part of this program. We have several awards that we want to present to Brother Saladin's family. We first have our Vice President, Mr. Bryce Carter, out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and he will be giving our first presentation. Greensboro.
Hello, brothers and sisters. All right. So here I am, Bryce Carter, Vice President of UE Local 150, North Carolina Public Service Workers Union. Brother Saladin was our elder, our mentor. Anytime you speak with him, there's some sort of wisdom and encouragement. And I thank him this day, I do. So I'm here to present the recruitment blitz to commemorate the life and legacy of a staunch fighter for the Black working class. He worked tirelessly and with amazing energy to organize, guide, and lead the working class in their fights and battles against oppression. The UE Local 150 Public Service Workers Union is dedicated to recruit and organize new members to improve the lives of public workers across the state of North Carolina. So this is our plaque here that's stating that our blitz is in its name. It's we call the Saladin Muhammad Recruitment Blitz. Let's move forward.
Thank you, Bryce. And Bryce is a city worker out of Greensboro, my apologies. Next, we have our member, Nichelle Dunlap Thompson, and she is from the city of Charlotte, and she will bless us with a spoken word in honor of Brother Saladin.
Good afternoon, comrades. I wanted to title this piece, of course, in the spirit of why we're all gathered here together. And the title that came to mind is The Storm That Brought Us Stabilization. Organize, organize, organize. Organize, organize, organize. Organize, organize, organize. Organize, organize, organize. I appeal to my ancestors as I stand in a place that I know my face has not yet quite earned. But I pay homage to my elder brother Saladin by vowing here and right now in this place, I promise to always present a willingness to learn. There is a force moving throughout this universe, and it is sweeping the Black and brown working class into a spiral of generational oppression without concessions. Our struggles have blended us into a fight. The Black and brown working class has been set and scheduled to rank last. Brother Saladin equipped us with the tools we need to prepare to continue to stand and weather through these political, economical, and social storms as we try to bandage some of these bleeds. The universe had no idea that such a strong wind would shift the energies and vibrations, but instead become one of the most fierce leaders of the Black liberation movement. And I would be remiss if I failed to allow you to know that that particular win qualified for nothing less than a category 4. I believe that's something to applaud. Elder Saladin believed that everyone had to think deeply in order to ensure that when the winds of oppression, racial discrimination, environmental traumas hit the doorsteps of our mamas, as well as all family units, we as men and women have been given authority to act on behalf of the Black liberation movement. We should respond with such waves that creates action, cadre, and revolutions. And all of us in this room represent a glimpse of that very solution. Because when we fight, our staunch fighter from Philly spoke against white privilege, chronic unemployment, massive homelessness, millions of Americans living uninsured. And he fought in this moment tirelessly, even while he battled within his own self concerning his health. From the hospital bed, I remember reading what Elder Saladin said. He wanted to know our intended goals, or were we there just to make noise? He asked, did the statement get placed on record? He wanted to know if it occurred before or after the ejection. Elder Saladin demanded to know the direction. He was a strategist, strategic thinker, and his voice made him an impactful speaker. Every encounter, every action, it had to make sense and resonate deeply. The question had to be answered, what is the meaning? So on today, we demonstrate what was the meaning of our revolutionary's life. It was to encourage the hopeless, strengthen the weak, as well as educate the masses and present to us a new vibration that exemplifies the meaning of self-determination. Elder Saladin believed a big wave like a tsunami can define an entire generation. And thus my reasons for titling this spoken word piece, The Storm That Brought Us Stabilization. Rest well, Elder.
And thank both of you all. You know, Brother Saladin meant a lot to everyone in this room, but he was everything to Huey. And so on behalf of Brother Saladin, we would like to present Brother Saladin's family, Black Workers for Justice, Southern Workers Assembly, with a copy of a resolution of life that we created for Brother Saladin. And it will be read by Sister Benita Johnson, our retiree worker out of DHHS. Hello. UE Local 150, North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, resolution of sorrow and respect to honor. Elder Saladin Muhammad. Whereas our Creator came into our midst and removed retired international representative Elder Saladin Muhammad, a founder of UE Local number 150, North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, from this life on September 19th, 2022. Whereas, along with family, friends here and abroad, as well as the working class who were touched, inspired, motivated, as well as liberated from the work of our fallen brother, Elder Saladin Muhammad, we share the loss of this great revolutionary. Therefore, be it resolved that we acknowledge to our Creator gratitude for his life upon the earth and know that his peaceful rest is in the arms of our, we say God on here, but we didn't want to put that, but our higher presence. Finally, be it resolved that we, UE Local number 150, North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, express our sympathy to the bereaved family and direct that the copy of this resolution be presented to them and a copy of permanently recorded upon the record of our union. Respectively submitted this the 12th day of November, 2022, by Sakia Royal, UE Local number 150 President, Bryce Carter, UE Local number 150 Vice President. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just take 1 minute. My name is Andrew Dinkelacker. I'm the General Secretary of the National Union, but our motto, our union, is members run this union. We're a democratic rank and file organization, so even though I'm a national leader, these are the co-pilots of the UE ship. So when we talk about the relationships that are being built here in North Carolina and across the South, those relationships are UE relationships as well at a national level. We recognize that. We want to honor that. We want to respect that. So though I might not have met any of you, a lot of you personally, to know that our brothers and sisters here on the stage are doing the good work, the revolutionary work of changing the environment, of changing the space between us so that we can respect each other and that we can grow from each other and we can be able to be more defensive about what it is that we've gotten and that we can take the offensive on the things that we need. And that is a legacy that we are proud that Saladin and the fact that he was able to spend all these meetings and all these different places that you spend a little bit of time with UE, the fact that he did that is a tribute to the membership of this organization, that it's honoring the principles of being member run, worker run, that you develop leaders from the ground up. That is where it's going to happen. And we need to support that every step of the way. So to everyone in this room and to the relationships that 150 and the Black Workers for Justice has created, we respect and honor that and look forward to hearing more and working with you all in the future. Thank you.
As the fruit of labor is coming forth, just want to let folks know that many of the songs that we write come out of the worker struggle that we're engaged in. All of us are activists, community activists, trade union activists, workplace activists. So we'll be back on in a couple minutes. We're going to try to shorten the program a bit.
All right, shouts out to UE 150. The next person we're going to have is going to talk about some of the worker schools and the Southern International Worker Schools that Black Workers for Justice was able to build. And then we'll go into remarks from Bishop Barber, and then we'll have a selection from the Fruit and other cultural presentations as well. But the next person is a person who has my name. Some say he was named after me or I was named after him. But but the next person to talk about the work that Baba Saladin was able to do and lead around worker school and educational institutions is my grandfather, the first Ajamo Dillahunt.
Good afternoon. You know, somebody made the observation that each time we get together to honor Saladin, a storm comes up, right? A storm. And I think it's just a way for us to remember the energy that he brought to this world, that he brought to the movement, and that he brought to our lives. I want to just share a little bit about Saladin's outlook on internationalism, imperialism, and education. And he came to these views not simply by reading or by theory, but through his life experiences. During his time in the military, stationed in the Dominican Republic, right? He was confronted with the face of US imperialism and white supremacy as it functioned abroad. He saw how the Dominican masses were forced to live and how they were treated with disdain and disrespect by white soldiers and Dominican elites. And the encounter with a racist sergeant heightened his anger and understanding of the relationship between US foreign policy and white supremacy. His experience in the Dominican Republic only sharpened his view about the racism and the institutions of the US government and revealed the role of US imperialism in this hemisphere. And it is on that foundation that he developed a keen sense of internationalism. The understanding was further sharpened with his engagement in the Black liberation movement as a cadre and a leader. Support for African liberation struggles, the fight against neo-colonialism, opposition to imperialist war in Southeast Asia, and US policy and interventions in Latin America and the Caribbean became an essential underpinning for his lifelong political work. And in his analysis of the world, he always asked the question, what about the working class? What is their condition? What role are they playing in the struggle for freedom and power? And how do we relate to them? This is the framework that Saladin applied to his leadership of our work in the Black Workers for Justice. There are many examples, but I want to cite just a few. With the leadership of Ashaki Binta, Dennis Orton, and the Southern Center for Labor Education and Organizing, we held international schools with workers from Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Europe on worker organizing in the auto industry and then in the public sector. A third school was organized by the Center and the Black Workers for Justice Women's Commission that brought together women labor activists from across the globe to educate one another on their struggles and how they might collaborate. We held a Black and Brown Workers School in Goldsboro to deepen our work with the Latino workers in North Carolina. And through our relationship with the Transnationals Information Exchange, Saladin traveled to Europe, meeting with workers in industries that we had organizing work going on here in the South. He hosted exchange delegations here in North Carolina. And this is interesting, and many don't know, but a group of Black trade unionists formed the Black Workers for Justice in Europe. They were primarily in the UK and France, and of course, Saladin was the key contact. He was instrumental in organizing our support work for Cuba and end to the blockade by the US. And in addition to participating in delegations, he helped to organize the Southern International Education Project that did education work about the connections between the Black Belt South and the Caribbean, especially Cuba and Haiti. He traveled to Geneva as part of a delegation of the US Human Rights Network to speak on the numerous human rights violations against Black communities and workers in the South. And I have a brief resolution I'd like to read that's related to that. The US Human Rights Network celebrates the life and legacy of one of its own, Saladin Mohammed, who has been a teacher, mentor, big brother, comrade, and human rights defender. Saladin served the network on its board and as a member for many years, helping guide and inform its mission to push forward a people-centered human rights movement in the US. As a network, we mourn his loss, we remember his work and wisdom, and we continue our commitment to bringing human rights home. Saladin inspired and invested in so many of us, and we have lost a confident and a trusted friend. We remain indebted to him and his contributions to the work of human rights. We offer our deepest felt condolences to Saladin's family, friends, and the world of human rights defenders he touched and impacted throughout his life. And that's signed by the US Human Rights Network. The international schools were part of the internationalism and anti-imperialism that we talked about. But schools were also foundational to the work in leadership development. There was not a time during the 40 years that Saladin wasn't urging, we need a school, we need a school, we need a school. And these schools and worker education have been part of our training members and allies. Training for organizing, leading an organization, and of critical importance, the source and reason for our exploitation and oppression. In other words, capitalism and imperialism. Many of these schools were held on this sacred ground here at the Franklin Center at Bricks, and often in this very room. And as I look around the room, many of you participated in those schools. We've used the models of schools in liberated zones during the national liberation struggle, the freedom schools created by SNCC during the civil rights movement, the Highlander Center, and the theories of popular education developed by Paulo Freire and others. The Southern Workers Assembly held a school in May, during which Southern Workers' political program was developed. Saladin's illness prevented him from being there in person, but he attended via a special feed. He was engaged until the very end of his amazing and illustrious journey. Long live the fighting spirit of Saladin Mohammed. Long live the fighting spirit of Saladin Mohammed. Long live the fighting spirit of Saladin Mohammed. Thank you.
Now we're going to have remarks from Reverend Barber, who's making his way up, and we're going to do a little shift in the format. So I'm going to take the mic off the stage, and Reverend Barber is going to speak from this area over here. So.
Solidarity. Good to see everyone. Do y'all mind if Miss Allen serves as a partial podium and come over here. I am so honored to be here today in memory of Saladin. When Vasim asked me, I don't normally come out on Saturdays evening when I've got to preach on Sunday morning, but this is church. Because the Jesus that I serve, the God I serve, there's no separation between justice and faith. And if it is some separation, then you must be worshiping the God Caesar or some other despot. I want to note a couple of things. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, "What doth the Lord require but to do justice and to love mercy," Naima, and to walk humbly before God. There's a quote that says, come here, young lady, right here. There's a quote that says, I'm gonna do the old way. You remember in the on Free Old Baptist Church, they would say read. And we read the scripture, so I'm gonna say hold. You know. There's a quote that says, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. If that is true, and I believe it is true, Bishop, a lot of lives have breathed easier because Saladin lived. Now, in some places, Saladin, the name literally means the key to religion is justice. That's what Saladin means. The key to religion is justice. Like God says, let justice roll down like waters. And Naima, who I also want to talk about today, in some places means grace and love. Key to religion is justice. In other words, if there's no justice in your religion, it's not religion at all. And then grace and love. And then, of course, Muhammad, praiseworthy. Praiseworthy. I think there are some things that are praiseworthy about these two. First, I want to thank God for Saladin's revolutionary commitment. Not just commitment, because some folk are committed with you until it gets rough, and then they're not committed. But when you get hooked up with a revolutionary, you can count on them. They don't move. You know where they are. You don't have to guess if they're with you. And I want to thank God. I think that is Muhammad, that is praiseworthy. And his commitment, when we say revolutionary spirit, not just to a little change or gradualism or moderation or just a tweak here and there, but revolutionaries understand the whole system has to shift. The whole system has to shift, and they never get satisfied with just a step. They may be thankful for a step, but they never get satisfied with a step. They are not satisfied until the journey is complete. That's what's deep about the revolutionary heart. And that's why the revolutionary has to have deep love. I think we don't talk enough about that, how revolutionaries have deep love for their people. That's what makes them You can't be a revolutionary and not have deep love for your people, even when your own people hurt you. Huh? Even when your own people hurt you because they have internalized some of the imperialism and the pain around them. But a revolutionary will keep on going and loving and believing and teaching. And when we hear that even with the respirator on, he was still trying to teach, that's revolutionary love. And we ought to be thankful for that. That is praiseworthy. Y'all aren't tired yet, are you? Revolutionaries also expose contradictions. That's the role of a revolutionary. They dig deep. They look at the root of issues. They don't accept surface and superficial answers. They expose the contradictions. Revolutionaries raise the uncomfortable truths. And one of the jobs of an elder revolutionary is to keep the right questions in the room. I remember when I first came to really know Saladin, and he would raise questions. And at first, to tell the truth, it was aggravating. And the reason y'all laughing, because y'all know what was aggravating you too. I know all y'all talking about how much you loved him, but sometimes he got on your last nerve. Every time we got to have a school, we got to have a school. It's like, Saladin, you said that last year. Well, and I had to come to understand, I thought first that he was questioning the movement. I remember Monday and all the things, as opposed, but what he was really doing was keeping the right political questions in the room. Because as long as those questions are in the room, you won't settle too easy. Saladin knew that in the imperialistic impulse is always lurking around. It's always around. It can slip up in a meeting easily. It can cause even people who are fighting for justice to sometimes settle for that which is less than real justice. He knew that. He knew that it's lurking around. And you know what imperialism is? Imperialism can be defined as the doctrine, the political strategy, the practice of trying to extend political and economic power over folk. That's really what imperialism is. And anytime it can be around trying to extend its reach, imperialism will try to reach inside your organization, reach inside your mind. It was Saladin's questioning that helped me on 2 days I remember distinctly. Now, he wasn't in the room, but I was in the room. The first time was the day when I was pulled in the room. I didn't like to be in these rooms alone, but every now and then folk would catch you, and I was over at the General Assembly. And I got pulled into a room, and the question was, will you stop pushing for an ending of the statute against state employees unionizing? They caught me, I was happened to be over there, and they pulled me in the room. And they said, because if you'll stop and separate yourself from the others that are doing that, we will guarantee a raise to the workers. And I remember some of Saladin's questions in that moment. Okay, so you want us, so you don't think we know that the statute in North Carolina was put on the books right after the Montgomery bus boycott movement because you were afraid of Southern organizing and Black and white people coming together in union. So you want us to give up for a little teeny raise the ability to choose our own destiny. You want us to accept your so-called right to work laws that are designed to undermine our ability to organize. And I remember sitting in that room when they said that, thinking about what would Saladin, what would Black workers say about this attempt to separate us? You know, Black workers were unionized not long after slavery, by the 1870s. There were Black and white union organizers in New Orleans, in Bessemer, Alabama, in East Kentucky. You know that song, Which Side Are You On? Yeah. That song came out of East Kentucky before it was ever on the lips of Black young people today. It was a white woman who was sung that song in the face of a sheriff that was trying to arrest her husband. And she asked the sheriff, which side are you on? Black workers were always involved. In the 1920s, my grandfather in West Virginia stood with white workers when they were fighting against the bosses in West Virginia, the mine bosses. And those miners had Molotov cocktails dropped on top of them by the government and the business. Black and white workers working together in West Virginia in the 1920s. There's always been this fear of the Black and working class and other working class people uniting. That's why that law is put on the books here in North Carolina to say that public service workers cannot organize. It was done almost a year, right at a year after the Montgomery bus boycott movement, because it was a fear of what could happen. Saladin knew that. And I remember that when I was in that room and was able to simply look at them and say, no, because see, you got to know what folk are scared of. And the truth of the matter is right now, 1/3 of all poor people live in the South. And right now, if just 4% of poor and low-wage workers would organize politically in Florida, they could determine every election in that state. 7% in Georgia, 12% in Alabama, 19% in North Carolina. Why is it that even the political parties don't go after it? Because there's always been a fear. Dr. King said it like this: the great fear of the Southern aristocracy would be for the masses of Black people, the masses of white people that are poor and low wage and workers to join together and form an economic, a political power block that could reshape the economic architecture of the entire South and the entire nation. You know, Saladin was clear. That song that Sauda Ashe wrote that you all sing, there's a line in it, don't you understand? If we're silent, we die. Solidarity. Solidarity. The second day his questioning was in the room was the day when I was in a room and I was asked by some political types if I would sign off on a suit that challenged voter ID, that challenged the voter suppression in North Carolina, but would not challenge the ID, if we would just not go after the ID. And when I'm in rooms like that, voices come back to me that I've heard. My daddy's voice, Saladin's voice, other voices, from history. And I remember looking at them and saying, what? And I said, no, because if you have voter ID, it forces people to show an ID, and that looks too much like having to carry free papers. That's exactly what and it's another way of allowing the empire to question my humanity, which is always the ultimate goal of the empire and imperialism, to question your very existence, to question who you are, to question your integrity, to suggest you're guilty before you do anything. That's why you got to have an ID, because I can't trust you. Your humanity is not real anyway. And isn't it amazing? There was no question about IDs as long as white men with land could vote on them. There was no problem. There was no talk about IDs until, and even though you may differ with some of the policies of Obama, but there was no IDs until the Southern strategy showed holes in it, and it broke some with the election. It wasn't so much Obama, it was the electorate. And so hearing those voices, I said, no, if we're gonna fight this voter suppression case, we're gonna go after pure racism. That's the problem. And they told us we couldn't win. But in 2017, we did win. The only state in the South. And I account that to being around revolutionaries who keep that question in the room. Are you just gonna settle for a little bit, or are you gonna fight for all that's needed? I remember others, Saladin would always raise in the room the right political question. Even if we accepted something, there's a way to lose and win. I'm not talking about what the Democrats are talking about right now, but Saladin knew that you got to be careful not to just accept a win that other folks determine is the win, that actually might be a form of deeper oppression. And we got to remember that. We got to remember that. UE 150, you have remembered that. You got to keep remembering that. You got to keep standing on that. I remember when they went after UE 150. I was in that room too. I was in the room when they said that you had to have a certain number of folk to have a union. Remember that, Jama? They called Andre Harris and me in the room that day. And they said, we want to make sure that you all are not going to stand against it. Are y'all crazy? Are you crazy? I said, if you do anything to adjust because they were up to say you had to have so many members, that we are going to stay connected to UE 150 and anybody else that's fighting for justice, because it's not the numbers inside, it's the agenda. And I thank God for Brother Saladin keeping the right questions, the right revolutionary question. Also, Brother Saladin kept a world view, not just a North Carolina or American view. He was an internationalist. He recognized the world struggle and our connection with people all over the world against unchecked capitalism and imperialism. He understood the connection between us and the people around the world, and us fighting anything that turns everything and everybody, especially colored people and poor people, into commodities. Commodities to be traded and taken advantage of and stepped on for the greed of other folk. Thank God for a revolutionary that doesn't allow us just to live in North Carolina, but reminds us that we are connected with soldiers and fighters all over the world. So yes, Brother Saladin Muhammad is praiseworthy. In fact, let me read a couple of quotes that reflect the kind of thinking that Brother Saladin possessed. They aren't his, but in his thinking, he must be remembered among these giants. When we think about Saladin, we must think about him among these giants. Listen to this quote. Again, we have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifice. The fact is, capitalism was built on the exploitation and suffering of Black slaves and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both Black and white, both here and abroad. There must be a better distribution of wealth, and maybe America must move towards democratic socialism. Now, Saladin could have said either one of those quotes, but that's not him, that's Martin King. Talking about democratic socialism, Martin King. The King we don't hear about on King Day. The point I'm trying to say is that when we remember Saladin in the annals of history, we have to sit him in this same circle. Listen at this one. It says, the fact of the matter is, we had a silent depression that has caught up with us. A political economist said it this way: what we're really beginning to experience in America, in an article called America Beyond Capitalism, is the process of slow decay punctuated by a recurring economic crisis, one in which reforms achieve sporadic gains, but the long-term trends of growing inequality, economic exploitation, dislocation, failing democratic accountability, deepening poverty, ecological degradation, greater invasions of liberty, and growing imprisonment, especially of minorities, continues to slowly and quietly challenge the belief in the capacities and moral integrity of the overall system and its governing elites. Now, Saladin didn't say that, but he could have. He could have stood toe-to-toe with his PhD in economics and sociology. And because of that, when we remember him in the annals of history, we must sit him in this room. We must sit him among the greatest thinkers and revolutionaries and fighters of our time, because Saladin would be right at home. Brother Saladin is praiseworthy because he always kept the right questions in the room and never moderated his viewpoint even when we didn't like it. Never lessened his critique of capitalism and imperialism, never lost his love for his people around the world and right here for 50 years. For 50 years, not 10 years, not 20 years, not 30 years, but 50 years loving your people and fighting for your people and struggling with your people. That's more than a generation of 40 years, 50 years, 50 years. You okay? But it wasn't just Saladin. It was also Naim. A revolutionary sister. She is not just a wife to a man. She is a co-equal with a man. A powerful, brilliant woman in her own right. And she too is Muhammad, praiseworthy. Let me honor Niyama this way. My daughter went to Bennett College in Greensboro, graduated valedictorian. went to UNC, went to Harvard, studied in Africa, Brazil, East Africa. She's now at Drexel, leading the Ubuntu Center for Public Health that focuses on Black community, public health. She's working to save a Black housing community from destruction, of greed. Now, why do I bring this up about my daughter? I bring it up in tribute to Naima, and wondering how many, particularly young women, has she mentored. This is what my daughter said, and she says it better than me. Miss Nahima's work and mentorship shaped my formative years in public health. I am where I am now because of her guidance. We met while I was a graduate student at UNC 15 years ago, and I learned so much from her about the power of local organizing, understanding the historical drivers of health inequalities in Black communities, and the necessity of speaking truth to power. She has a Fannie Lou Hamer spirit and is not afraid, is not afraid to say what needs to be said and to critique those in position of power. She calls me to think deeper and to critique even more. I remembered her words even when I was studying at Harvard, and even now. Her work in the environmental justice movement in North Carolina as grassroots organizer is unparalleled. Her ability to bring together scholars and activists to address environmental injustice in Eastern North Carolina is unparalleled. Earlier this year, I knew that I had to invite her to teach at the Ubuntu Center, and she shared her wisdom and expertise. Her critique is always spot on. I am where I am because Sister Naima is who she is. Isn't that something? My sister, you and your husband are indeed praiseworthy. Some people are named and they never live out their names. But Saladin is one who knew that any religion without justice is no religion at all, and that justice is key to religion. Naima, you have been filled with grace and a powerful love. And as your last name Muhammad means, each of you are praiseworthy in and of your own right. And then to think, when the average length of marriage in this country is 7 years, 56 years, somebody ought to say something. 56 years. Don't get mad if you didn't make it, just celebrate them. 56 years. 56 years. 56 years. Revolutionary love ain't nothing to play with. Oh, have mercy. Have mercy, Jesus. And so I want to do something in closing. I want to ask us all to stand. I want you to know that on behalf of my family and Sauda and Yara, today we're going to leave a $1,000 check to you, and for you and your family to be blessed by it. I want to make sure somebody comes to the car and get that, right? But we want to be a blessing. I want to ask us, to my left is the South, and I want us to turn to the South, which is that way. And I want us for a moment to remember all of the revolutionary fighters that have come from the South in history, that are still with us, but they're just in the great cloud of witnesses. And we place Brother Saladin there. Then I want you to turn to your right and face the west. And remember all of the revolutionaries that have come from the west. From the west. West Africa, the west. And we place Saladin's memory in their midst. Then I want to ask you to turn one more time to your right, to the north. Excuse me. Yes. And all of those who have come from the north, the northern hemisphere, all of those who have stood, we place Brother Saladin there. Then I want to ask you to turn one more time to the east. And remember Brother Saladin and all of the freedom fighters, the revolutionaries, the strugglers for freedom and justice that have come from the east. And place his memory there to never be forgotten, but to always be looked to when we see the sun rising in the east and we remember to see it setting in the west. Ashe, 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 Ashe.
So